Okay, so it's recording. And I'm going to stand over here and just take off my mask because I'm far enough away. This is the 6 feet, so I'm going to do that. All right, so I'm going to read from Matthew 22, 26 through 40. Actually, instead of reading the whole thing, I've kind of summarized it. So the religious authorities came to Jesus and they posed a riddle for him. They said, okay, so a woman has a husband, the husband dies, and then she marries another, and she goes through 7 husbands. Imagine having that kind of luck, right? All 7 husbands die. And then they ask Jesus, then she dies. So who does she belong to, in the afterlife? And Jews weren't even big on heaven, they weren't sure what happened, but she was clearly somebody's property. And whose was she? And I had one friend say, yeah, they're trying to figure out who gets the person that does the dishes and the cooking. But anyway, what do you think Jesus said? This is not a well-known question that was offered to Jesus. You remember what Jesus said? He said, your question is wrong-headed. And of course, he didn't use that language, but something very funny like that. He said, your question is wrong-headed because don't you know that God says, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? And he didn't say, I'm the God of the dead. He says, I'm the God of the living. And God is living, so even God is not dead. And so basically he's saying, the living, pay attention to the living. And so his answer astounded the crowd. And then the Pharisees were like, dang, we didn't get him with that one. So then they put someone forward, and that person says, they gather together. One of them, a lawyer, says, teacher, which commandment is the greatest? And so, there's like 321 commandments. And so they picture Jesus rattling through the list in his mind. Jesus didn't even have to pause. He says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. That's the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. What more do you need? These 2 sum up the whole Bible. And again, they couldn't trick him, with ranking the different, because those commandments sum up everything. And so they're like, well then I wonder why we have 321 or 361 commandments, It's like that sums them all up, in case you wondered, And so there's humor in Jesus's answers to the people. And so I wanted to look at humor in the Bible and humor in Jesus' parables, which we've talked about before. But the reason I wanted to do this is because we need humor and we need laughter. When we don't have as much community as we normally need, we don't have it as much. And so we need the humor, we need the laughter. And I know there's humorous things online, and we need that too. I look at Facebook maybe once a week now. I've really gotten away because I'd rather be out talking with people. I'd rather talk with people on the phone than see their posts. There are a few people that the only way I can connect is through their posts. So I'll look at it once a week. But that's why if you haven't seen me, it's because I'm really not on it. And but I love the humor on it. And actually a friend posted something that when he was a young guy, he wanted to impress some girls. And he was in a convertible at a drive-in restaurant. And that's funny, they're making their way back now when we can't, But anyway, he wanted to impress the girls in the car next to him. And so he decided to show them how cool it was when the top went up and then folded down into a slot in the trunk. And he turned it on, and it got tangled in the overhead of the drive-in. And it was his father's pride and joy. And so, here's this young guy wrecked, and they had to call the service people, and they came and they untangled it. They had to fix it. And he knew his father was going to get a big bill for this, and he just never. So he went home and he told his dad, "I want to tell you before the bill comes if this is what happened." And he was afraid the father was going to be angry, and instead the father just laughed and laughed and laughed. And so, we're thinking about laughter in the Bible, and one of the greatest occasions of laughter is Abraham and Sarah. So I don't really think that they were having a baby in their 90s. But we know that they were old. So, if a woman stops having a period at 45 or 50, so maybe she was in her late 40s. In those days, that was old. And she had a miracle baby, which happens. I've heard of women occasionally in their 50s being surprised. They thought it was menopause and it was a baby. And so that happens on rare occasions. So I think it was something probably like that. But she had given up the notion of having a baby, but she dreamed of it, but she'd given up, And Abraham was so desperate for an heir that he had slave women, and he had children with them, which were then kicked out. It was a very unjust society if you weren't on top in those days. But anyway, when the angel visitors tell Abraham that they're going to have a baby, she's listening at the door, and she laughs. And, a lot of gods in those days would have punished someone who laughed at what the god said. And Abraham probably couldn't keep a straight face either at the thought that they would have a baby. And so, laughter. And you know what Isaac means? Isaac was their son. It means laughter. So not only did God not punish them for laughing at the notion, but they named the son Isaac, which is laughter. Now that's a delightful story. There's also a psalm verse that the people had been in exile. Aren't we in exile right now? We're kind of in exile from our normal lives. And when they came back, their mouths were filled with laughter. Isn't that a beautiful notion? And I saw a poem that was by a teacher who lived very simply in a hut in the desert. And he said, "Don't tell me that my hut has nothing to offer you. Come and experience how the window is full of a breeze." The simplicity of that, and how laughter and joy can be part of even the most simple life. And so there's a quote that says, "The world is a looking glass, and it reflects back to you what you give it. So if you frown at the world, it's going to frown back at you. And if you smile and laugh at the world and with the world, at ourselves and with ourselves, then the world will reflect that back." And this quote said, "The world would be a jolly companion for you." And so as much as we have laughter and joy, it's reflected back to us. And we should laugh, because who does God choose as God's servants in the world? Us. The most unlikely, right? And so, so it's worth laughter. And what I wanted to tell you today is that, well, first let me give you another few examples from the Bible, okay? So Jesus tells a parable, a lot of his parables, the whole point of a parable is a surprise ending. So the thing you don't expect is the surprise ending. And so people thought they knew what would happen in God's banquet at the end of time. It would be, the people who were upright, the people who lived righteous lives, the people who had standing in the community. Those would be the people who would be at God's banquet. Those people ended up being too busy to come. I have to take care of this. I have to take care of that. I'm not going to make it. And so in Jesus' parable, he goes out and he gets the rabble, from the alleys and byways, and the people who were homeless, and people who thought they would never be at a banquet. They were at a banquet. So it was a surprise ending for Jesus and telling the people. The whole story of the prodigal son and the upright older brother. You think the older brother, he worked hard. He earned his inheritance. And the younger brother, a goof off, right? Not responsible. Who gets the inheritance in a sense? I mean, he spends it, he wastes it. And he comes home, and the father gives him the family credit card, which is in a signet ring. And, there's a feast thrown. And, the father says to both, everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours. God says that to us. No matter how much we think we're not worthy of it. And then there's the parable also from Luke 15, where the successful rancher leaves his fat herd, his money. The herd is his money. He leaves it behind and goes after the scrawny lamb that nobody even noticed was missing. He goes after the lamb. He leaves the herd. And he goes after the one lamb and brings it back. That's us. Instead of doing what makes sense, God's love is poured out in a way that we can't even conceive of. And then the most wonderful story of all. Jesus is crucified, the most humiliating death you could have. And Jesus was crucified, and through that, and through the mystery of love, we're all saved. All of us. And no matter what. And so I was thinking that the thing we most dream of, what do we most long for? Isn't it to be loved and to love back? And the thing we most long for is the thing that God makes happen. And it doesn't even depend on us. You don't have to earn it. In fact, you can't earn it. That's the whole definition of grace. And so whatever it is we most long for in our deepest heart of hearts, that's what God makes happen. And so we are all invited to the story. And there it is. And so I think of John 10:10. I've known that since I was 13 years old. And it's that Jesus has come that we might have life and we might have it abundantly. And so whatever it is in life that you most long for, that's what God is giving us. And what a delight. Judges, doesn't it fill your mouth with laughter? Doesn't it just make you delight? And so the more laughter we can enjoy